All right, brother, 2-hour drive from the valley
2 hours and 20 minutes.
just to see us. That's not a good start.
Well, it's fine. I hate LA enough, so just getting here was bad enough.
I used to drive to LA a lot. We have a branch in Westwood, and I used to drive there all the time. It takes me longer to get to Westwood now than it takes me to get to Las Vegas.
I still can't figure out. I used to live here. I used to live in Glendale when I was a kid. Yeah.
Okay.
I can't understand why people live here. Like
Really?
nowhere in California. Like
Nowhere in California.
It doesn't make any sense.
There are pockets that are nice, but if
High taxes,
taxes are terrible.
terrible.
Yeah.
Bad laws,
Mm-hmm.
terrible governance,
Politics are terrible here.
terrible. Like
You
across the
cannot-
board, like the
Yeah.
bad non-common sense laws.
And the worst part is the homeless population has
Yeah,
gotten
it's
so
just-
bad that
exactly,
people
it's
who
just-
otherwise were living in really nice areas are saying, I don't want to live there anymore.
So outside of the weather, unless you're in Hollywood, which I get, like if you're in porn in Hollywood, I get it because it's like, where else are you gonna go?
Even
except
they're
Florida?
leaving, man.
Exactly, they're starting trend to Florida too.
Yeah.
You're all coming over there.
Yeah. I mean, there was an exodus that went from here to Texas, here to like Nevada, and here to
Of
Florida.
course, yeah.
And it's gotten nothing but worse over
Yeah,
time.
Exactly. Yeah.
Even now they're trying to figure
And
out.
I think it's
tax
going to
limits.
continue to get worse too.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I think it's going to get way bad. Yeah.
Until there's some kind of like radical change politically.
Because Florida went from like where I used to live was like $400 a square foot to like $2,000 a square foot.
Yeah.
Like, just because of all that constant, like everyone's trying to come up there, like getting
Well,
out of control.
Let's get to the good stuff.
All
I
right.
want to get to what you do because there's a lot about what you do, right?
I do a lot of stuff here.
And I will admit that I nerded out on your background long before you were contemplating to
Oh,
be
boy.
a guest on the show. No. I'm a big fan. I like
the drug
cars.
dealer part? What part?
Not the drug dealer part, the car part. I've always loved cars. I built a couple of cars myself, and
Well, that's what I meant. I'm a car drug dealer.
I'm hoping if this goes well, we can talk about you selling the 355 at some point in time
Okay.
because that car is immaculate, and what you did the interior with the
Yeah,
black interior.
Oh, you're falling deep
I'm
now.
falling
Okay.
deep. 355 happens to be a personal favorite, but yeah. So tell everybody what it is that you do and how we got to here.
Okay, so I teach people how to make really creative decisions around their finances in order to be able to avoid lifestyles that the universe, or should I say the government, has made you believe you can't afford.
Mm.
And so society has made people believe that they basically need to think a certain way about money over the years, over the last, like 5-6 decades. And as a result, people have become sheep across the world and have become very, very okay with living very mundane lifestyles, very boring, filled with lack of experience, lack of excitement. And they continuously live in fear around finance, that they're not going to have enough and that they need to be conservative and everything. And I think I blame like the Suze Ormans, the Dave Ramseys.
I hate Dave Ramsey.
Right, but complete morons. But I'm saying like I look at those people as the people who have made quite a huge name for themselves and have had a lot of success over this baseline stupid finance angle of like education. But because of that success, they've been non-adaptive and been kind of like catering to their crowd. So as they get bigger, they accumulate more followers rather than actual people who get better. And so, and I have a huge background in finance. And so when I was in finance, I wasn't that rich. I was just a normal W-2 guy, like working. And I wanted a Lamborghini. So I was like, okay, Lamborghini, W-2 guy doesn't add up.
And people demonize people for wanting
Right,
that.
exactly. But
there's nothing wrong with wanting
no,
that.
I mean, listen, the only people who demonize money are people without money. The only people who demonize power are people with no power. So you never demonize what you seek yourself. You'll only demonize what you don't think you can get. So if you're a human being and you're like, oh, these guys, all they want is power and this, and they just want to tell us how to live, it's because you have zero control over anything you do in your life. And you just project that out. And you're basically like, I'm powerless across the board, so I hate people that have power. But like, there's never a person, like for example, you don't have to like certain politicians, but if you're already in power somewhere for something, you understand why they do what they do. So you're not confused about it. You're just like,
Yeah.
I get it. Like if I could, I would also do that if I was in that power. But most people don't think that way, right? So like they just look at what they don't have and they just demonize what they'll never get, because then that way it creates a peer group of other idiots that they put together, and these other idiots together just end up being like self-satisfied that that's just what they have.
So I've long had a theory, and Said's heard this over and over again, that during the Industrial Revolution, they got a lot of the wealthiest families in the United States together, and they said, what do you want from your ideal worker? the Rothschilds, the Vanderbilts, they all got together. They told the government, we want somebody who's going to raise their hand, who's going to respond when the bell rings, who wants upward mobility in companies. And that became the American dream because they sold it to us. And we believed in it. And we went to work every single day believing that we, as a result, would get things like a pension or a retirement plan would set us on the rest of our life. But that isn't true anymore.
Well, I think the internet changed that. And I think people didn't get adaptive fast enough, partly because they were waiting there to be told what to do. And I think when you're waiting to be told what to do and they told you to do something and it didn't work, then you blame the person that told you what to do.
Yeah.
Right? Because you're like, well, you told me to do this. You said this would happen. Well, yeah, it didn't happen. Sorry. It's like, well, that's the type of personality I have. It's like, I want to be told what to do. Well, if you're that kind of person, you're generally always going to be behind because you're waiting for someone else to get to the pot of gold and then tell you what to do to get there. So it's just not going to work.
So I didn't realize when I first started following you for cars a long, long time ago that you had written, at the time, I think it was 2 books, now 3.
I've written 12.
Have you written 12?
Yeah, 12. So the
God.
Third Circle Theory, which is my most famous book,
Right.
is actually book number 9 or 10.
Why the hell have you written 12 books?
Well, because I didn't know.
God.
So I never went to school. So like I went to high school, but like I never went to college, and I sucked at like writing. I never read a book in my life, which is the other context of. So not having read any books meant that I didn't have a context of how books were written. Right. So for a really long time, especially when I started my first online company, Secret Entourage, I used to write books on finance. And I was like, I know a lot about like finance and creative financing. So I'm going to talk about like wealth management. I'm going to talk about banking management. I'm going to talk about just regular savings management and things that were different than what the Dave Ramsey's or Suze Orman's were talking about, but in a more conventional setting, like black and white type books. And so I wrote a book called Broke on Another Level, which was basically the idea of how credit makes you feel rich, but you're still broke, you know? Like I wrote a book called Stay Poor, how like the poverty mindset can actually help you like succeed in life by actually...
Scarcity?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. By like
Gotcha.
feeling poor, by making decisions that basically allow you to park money. And it wasn't until like I'd written all these little finance books that I kind of realized like, I was like, these are all my learnings from what other people have taught me or what I've observed other people doing. They weren't really proprietary. It wasn't like written from a place of authenticity until I kind of started looking at Third Circle Theory, because I was like, I started kind of looking back and saying, what made me different from all these other people? Like, what makes me always keep like looking for the other way or like the better way, constantly like striving. I was in banking, I became like the number one banker. I was in management, I like exceeded at every step. You know, like I was number one banker. Like I created an idea called the airport banking when people were like, it's stupid. So like, why am I always like overachieving and everything? Even though I'm not really like working so many crazy hours. I'm not like a workaholic, but I was like, at the time, I was like, I'm just winning all the time. And I'm like, what makes me different? Like, why do I look at other people and they don't win? So I started realizing that like, I have just a heightened sense of self-awareness. And I was like, it's not really like science. It's just, there's a way I got here. So it was like for Third Circle.
Why do you think you have that? Like, what is it that's different for you?
I think that I don't have an illusion of who I am in the world. And that's, I think, the bigger piece. Like people can't separate themselves from society and themselves from life. And I think one thing that happens is like, I'm not blind to my own weaknesses and I'm not blind to my own strengths. So like when no matter what I faced, I would always know my handicap ahead of time. So like when I got in banking and I was an 18-year-old getting into banking, which was like crazy. I didn't have a degree. You know, I went in knowing I was an underdog. So it wasn't the ego thing. Like I got a bank manager job, you know, and I'm like a big shot. And it was the opposite. I was like, I'm retarded. Like I know nothing about banking. Like these people are out of their minds for giving me money to do this.
But you had something that somebody wanted to hire.
Yes.
Somebody else could see it.
Yeah, but this is the
point.
thing. No, I knew I had something, and that's the difference. I knew I was a great sales guy. But going into it, I knew I lacked everything I needed to be a great banker. So people would say, well, I got the job, so I deserve the job. To me, it was the exact opposite. I was like, I convinced one person to like give me a shot at this job. So now I have to prove all the other people that were against that decision that it was worth it so I don't dishonor that one guy that took a shot. So like to me, like to have that level of thought process is just really important at every stage of the game. Regardless that I was 18, I still do that today. I'm not like blind to reality. You know, I'm like my personality on YouTube is very polarizing. It's very opposite of what people do.
I like it though.
Right. But
Yeah.
and real wealthy people like it because they're like, there's real knowledge and that's what I care about.
You challenge a conventional norm. And
Exactly.
frankly, a conventional norm that has really hurt more people than helped more people.
Yes, but that's not how. Remember, there's 99% of
I know,
populations
I
is
know.
1% that make it.
Yeah.
So to create that and to basically create the opposite, to make people feel uncomfortable for the majority of the people like listening, instead of making them feel good. Like going into that, I knew I wasn't going to be for everyone. And I knew that journey was going to be 10 years to do what I could have done lying in one, you know, like pretending to be and be like, what do I have to do to get more viral, more exciting? And I was like, I don't care because I'm not really interested in like fame. I'm interested in being able to do what I love doing for 30 years.
Yeah.
So it was like, how do I like guarantee that I do that for 30 years instead of worry about what does the world want me to do now? And what about in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years?
A message you have resoundingly in your 3 books that
Yes,
I read,
correct.
at least, and
Yeah.
I apologize to anyone as well. You talk about chasing passion constantly.
Mhm.
And that's such like it's a weird thing. Nobody tells their kids to go do whatever it is you're passionate about. Go chase that. And it's such a simple message. And the irony is that that's as much bravado as you might come off, and you might come off polarizing. Telling people to chase their dreams is not a bad thing.
So it's not a bad thing as long as they have context that their dreams don't always pay the bills.
No.
So those
Like
are two
podcasts.
right. So those are two different things again. But this is what I mean when I say you talk about like the reality of a situation. Like I've always wanted to work with like consciousness, my passion for teaching around, you know, human consciousness, awareness, self-awareness. All the framework of my books have always been what I'm most passionate about. So if you told me there's this guy in front of me, let's coach about where you are in the spectrum of self-awareness, awareness, and consciousness, I would tell you, I can talk about that for like 4-6 hours, nonstop. I don't care. But the reality is, that isn't what is going to get me paid to live the lifestyle I really want yet. The key is that I may have to do 100 other things to bridge myself to get to a point where I've earned my right to have that conversation in public continuously. So the difference with me writing these books, starting in 2013 when I published first Third Circle Theory, was that I understood that journey could take 20 to 30 years before it catches up to the mass markets. And I understood that the lifestyle I wanted wasn't going to wait 20 to 30 years to be able to have the cars I want, have the house I want, live the way I want, not take shit from anybody. So I was like, I got to figure out how to make a shit ton of money. And that doesn't have to be directly linked to my passion. But it also doesn't mean that I can abandon my passion today because it doesn't do that. And the more I make money, the more it fuels that. So let me just figure out that society and money making needs to be figured out now while my passion can not take a back burner, but can be part of that process. Even if it's 1% a year, it's better than no percent working towards that so that eventually the transition can happen in a very effective manner and not for the world, but for myself. And that's the key. Consciousness is a single player sport, I always say. So it's always about your capacity to engage in the experience you want to have 20, 30 years from now and the intent you create today to be able to go through that. Because the biggest gift we have is being able to wake up, sharing our talent, what we're here to do, with everyone else. And even though it's impacting people, it's the experience we're creating for ourselves doing it that really matters the most.
So I have to ask the question because I'm a car guy. You're a car guy. When you were growing up, eventually at some point you got that Lamborghini and a lot of other nice cars.
Very early too. Yeah,
Yeah.
20 years old. Yeah.
When you got it, did it motivate you for more? Did it make the hunger even hungrier? Or did you feel complacent at some point in time, like I got here? Like, at what point did you hit an inflection point where you started to look in the mirror and go, okay, I can do this?
So curiosity was what happened when I got my car. I got my first exotic. I've always had nice cars because I worked since 14. And I was working as an immigrant without a green card, but I still was making bank. Between 14 and 16, I had accumulated like a $50K a year job. So at 16, I was doing sales for a remodeling company, like roof siding, windows and stuff. and I was the number one salesperson. So by 18, I was the director of the company making $80K a year. And this was back, again, this is like the year 2000. You know, we're not talking about like now where you're basically a broadcaster making,
inflation,
80K a month. So back then, I was doing that, which was really good money, and like I was already supporting my family and I was already putting money aside, and I had nice cars. Like I had an Evo, a Mercedes, like these little cars. And at that time it was like 20, 30 grand cars, which were a big deal.
Yeah.
And so as I kind of progressed and I got my first banking job, I got in some really bad car problems by like getting in a serious, like 2 to 3 serious bad accidents in a row. And I had kind of given up on these like fast cars. So I started buying luxury cars, not on my dreams, just like, I was like, my insurance is killing me now. I totaled like 3.
You don't want to die.
Super expensive cars. So I was like, let me just buy like luxury cars. And then for the first exotic, when I kind of recovered from that, which was right about when I was like 18 and a half, 19 years old, I bought myself a 911 Turbo. And that was my dream car. That's what I wanted. And that's what I bought myself. That's all I wanted to own. When I bought that for myself, the goal at that point was I started hanging out with people that had Lamborghinis, Ferraris, because 911 Turbo is a
It's a tight
respectful
circle, yeah.
Yeah, it's a respectful car. It's like $200K car at the time. It's depreciated 100K. So I was like, hey, I'm gonna drive around and meet people. And when I started meeting guys, a lot of successful guys had Lamborghinis. So it was like, I didn't really care for a Lamborghini, but I was like, you know what? Everybody keeps running to those people every time we're at a car meet, and they're like, oh my God, like, look at that guy's car. And I was like, to me, owning a Lamborghini wasn't even about the speed or like, because the turbo was faster, my car was modern and stuff. It was the one thing I was like, I want to know what it feels like to be that guy. I look at that guy and I'm like, everybody wants to be friends with that guy, and nobody knows who he is, what he is, just because of his car. I don't want to kiss his ass. So I was like, I want to know what it feels like to be that guy. So I bought a Lamborghini just for that. Like, to be like, yeah, I want to be like, so I got rid of my 911 Turbo. I bought that. And when I bought the car, like, I bought it right the way I bought the Turbo. But when I sold my 911 Turbo, something really incredible happened. That was the first car I had driven in like more than any other car. I kept it 2 years. And in those 2 years, I literally lost like 5 grand.
Yeah.
And all my other cars, I lost like 20 grand in like 3 months. And I was like, this doesn't make any sense. Like, why did I drive this car so long, put so many miles, spend so much time with it, use it so much, and it didn't appreciate? So when I bought my Lamborghini, I used the same strategy again to buy it. And this time I made money. I made like 13 grand on my Lambo. And I was like, okay, like something doesn't add up here. Like, what am I not catching? And like why am I losing money on these cheaper cars that are cheaper technically in nature and cost less to maintain? But like, I'm buying a much more expensive car now, and like everyone's trying to buy it from me for like more money than I paid. So I was like, I don't get it. So I kind of drove that. And then from that same feeling from the Lamborghini, when someone offered me more money, I was like, yeah, take the car. Like, fine, I made money doing this. I was like, I don't want to lose money on the car, so I'll take it. And then I was like, I wonder what it's like to own a Ferrari. So I bought a Ferrari and an Aston. And I was like, I want to know that experience from firsthand. And that's why I just kept going through cars at the beginning. And because I didn't assume that I liked something without experiencing it. And I think that's one of the big, again, like the self-awareness coming into the game, which is like, instead of saying I want a Lamborghini because that's the car to own, or like it's the greatest car and I'm going to investigate how fast it goes and like how cool it is, I was like, I wonder what it's like. And when I found out what it's like, I gravitated back, after Ferrari, after Aston Martin, back towards Lamborghini again. I was like, I like that brand. I like what it does. I like the feeling of driving it. And so between that, Aston and Porsche, they became my kind of like 3 personal favorites, and I kind of kept going through, and based on the money I had at the time, I would either upgrade or downgrade to like 2 cars, 1 car, 3 cars, and so on and so forth. As a working guy, that's what you do. You're like looking at your car payment structures and you're like, what can I afford? And you kind of grow from there.
So I know that for a lot of people listening to the show, the ideology of being able to buy an exotic car, drive it, make money on it, and have it appreciate value and actually use it as an investment sounds crazy. But the fact of the matter is people are doing it.
And it's happening every day.
Every single day. Mm-hmm. And that's, so we were talking before we started recording. A good friend of mine, Adam Schaefer from Mind Pump, he took your course. Didn't tell me, of course. He just shows up with a 430 one day, and I'm like, wait a minute. Beautiful spec car. He then got an 812. I think he bought it from Hunter Exotics, which is
Exotics Hunter. Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the partners at Exotic Car X. Meaning he's the partner dealer that helps with all the facilitating all the deals. Yeah.
So he's super proud of it. He wasn't planning on buying it. An opportunity came up, and he was talking about the spec and everything else. So he wanted me to ask you in particular, if you had to pick an order of priority of price, model, miles, and spec, what would your order of priority be?
In order of priority,
Yeah.
price would be the lowest.
Okay.
The lowest. It's never about price. Anytime you buy anything based on price, you're buying the wrong value. That's always the case. Doesn't matter it's a house, a car, or anything else. Um, it's very subjective because spec and model play a significant like role together. If you buy a really high end model and a low spec, you're killing yourself. And if you buy a really high spec of a low end model, you're killing yourself. So it's not really like a question of like which one is most important. It's more that like depending on which you pick, then the next thing becomes most important. So there, like as an example, if you buy like Ferrari Portofino or California T because you're gay, like generally, like you buy these cars. Sorry, but if you buy those cars, typically, like you have to buy them in a budget fashion. So price plays a significant role because the next buyer is price conscious. So if you bought like a California T at a huge high dollar because it's like the craziest one-off spec car, like no one cares for that car.
You're going to lose a cost-conscious buyer. Anyway.
I mean, you're going to lose 50 to 60 grand on a car and get killed. But if you look at that and say, because I'm buying a cost-conscious Ferrari that's like depreciating, that's what people want. They want a cheaper version of an entry-level Ferrari. Then price plays a big role in that purchase for that car. But if you're buying like an 812, now you're buying the higher spectrum of the brand. So you're like, yeah, I'm buying the more expensive Ferraris. These are people who typically have enough money to have choice. So they're not on a budget. They're like, what do I like better? Do I like this 812, an Aventador? Like once you're buying a 500, 400K car, you don't have a 30K problem in options. You know, you're not like, well, you're just like, I really wanted a blue car. Well, I hope this one's blue because that's what I really want. You know, and the 30K disappears in that motion of like in your thought process of purchasing. So in a higher end setting, spec plays a significantly higher role. You know, like, and same with Porsches. You see the same Porsche for a different color go for 150K more than the other Porsche.
Oh, big time.
Right.
Color is a huge priority. Yeah.
And here's the crazy part. The 150K more car sells in 10 seconds. And the car that's like the lower end car that's like just as good, but it's like a different shade of blue that like a lot of people would buy because the price is great. That sits on the market for like 6 months and eventually it sells for decent money, but doesn't sell as fast. So one of the things you realize is that exotic cars from back in the day are very different than exotic cars today. And this is one of the reasons why, like back then I was talking about this in finance. I'm like, finance is very progressive because things change in the world. And customer behavior changes towards things.
Yep. The rate environment, consumers,
customers'
changes,
acceptance. Like maybe you'd say back in the 90s, 4,000 square feet was a lot of space for a house. And you would say today, 10,000 square feet is a new money space. You know, so like when you look at that and you go, if that's changing, then the financial tools around that are changing. The jumbos, the cost basis, like where people live because of the space size and everything. Yep. And you can kind of predict based on that behavior, like how things are going to turn out. As an example, back when I started playing with exotics, nobody would finance exotics. They were like, are you out of your mind? Like, you know, like why would I want to finance a $200,000 car as a bank? This is crazy. You know, we'll finance like 50% of that. But that's not sustainable. Meaning like that's not, in an industry that's growing at the phase it was growing, I was like, that's not sustainable for a bank not to make money by just not participating because they're afraid.
That's right.
So I said, as the industry expands, then obviously they're going to be like, oh, you know, I get it. Like this is something good. If you went on a drop down on Auto Trader, you couldn't even find Ferrari at the beginning because they were like, nobody's selling Ferraris. So there wasn't even one on sale in there. So it's like you had to go to back end channels or like specialty magazines to find them. So as the industry was changing and shifting, I knew for a fact that the supporting mechanisms of those industries would have to grow with it. So doing that meant that more people would buy exotics, but it also meant that more manufacturers would make exotics. And if you look back in the year 2000,
they have been, yeah.
You had like each manufacturer had like two cars. Like you had a Ferrari 360 and a 575. You know, you didn't really have like 14 models of the car. You didn't have an entry Ferrari all the way up to $1 million. And you also knew back then that like, okay, a Lamborghini Diablo, people were like, oh, it's terrible. It's always broken. And I was like, yes, but it's like the third car they ever made. So like give them like time, right? Like as a manufacturer, they're still selling them even though they're broken and they're not working. And then they introduced the Gallardo with the whole Audi concept, and it's suddenly a reliable car. And people are like,
people were daily driving them for a while.
Right. And the problem was that people would still say, it's a Lambo, it's breaking down. And I was like, No, it's not. It's not a Diablo. Like, I understand like what you're thinking because your grandpa once read a magazine that told him that that guy lost, his money.
Yeah.
But I was like, just these mechanisms, like, and this is where people got this. If you can't afford an exotic cash, you shouldn't buy it, because back then they weren't even like allowing financing.
And banks finally caught on too. They realized that these are ultra high net worth buyers.
They're not only better buyers,
Yeah.
but the cars don't depreciate as much. Get it? Like, so this is one of the things. Like, banks realize that too now. So
You can lose a Honda Accord and it can be taken away and people can't find it. It gets lost in a sea of
100%,
Honda
yeah.
Accords. You can't lose a Ferrari or Lamborghini.
No. Not only you have better buyers, you have more responsible buyers generally. Even if you take, there's scam artists, there's people that are doing this. They're not getting
course.
financed by banks anyways. They're getting financed by like lease companies that are fake rental companies, hidden as lease companies. But the reality is that there is such an amount of knowledge today about an industry that was in its infancy stages in the 2000s and is now, in the 2020 era has become so mainstream and real that what I was getting to, the point I was getting to is that the industry then too in the exclusivity sector was very different. If you owned a Ferrari, it was an exclusive right in 2000. Today, if you own a Ferrari, you're one of a lot of people, so it's not that exclusive. This is where spec comes in. This is what you were asking about, spec, price, and everything.
Yeah.
Owning a Ferrari is not exclusive anymore. Owning a specialty Ferrari is exclusive. Now, owning a specialty Ferrari in a specific color is the most exclusive. The richest people in the 2000s, they're not buying California teas. They're now buying the rarest pistas, SF90, X extra dollars. They're buying the SVJs, the crazy hypercars. Like, those guys that were buying, like me, like 2000, in the 2000s, were buying 100K cars. They're buying $3 million cars today.
Yeah.
So
And
that's
I'm waiting
that
for it.
evolution,
Yeah.
right? So that's what it is. But the same guys in the 2000s that were buying like Lamborghinis then, they were driving Honda Civics, like back at the beginning, when they were really young. So this evolution is the same crew, that just kind of keeps pushing the industry forward. And the amount of money injecting in has their friends and family coming in too. Like, oh, I want one. You're doing it. It's great.
It seems attainable. When your friend drives a Ferrari, you realize that it's not impossible.
Because it triggers your curiosity. Because you know your friend. And if your friend knows something you don't, you're willing to ask him.
Yeah, like Adam. First question I asked him, like, bro,
What's going on?
What's
You
going
hit
on?
the lotto or something?
Yeah, like I don't understand. Like, why all of a sudden? And we had conversations. And now what do we do is we're online constantly looking at cars that the other one can buy, sending them back and forth, and it's no longer unattainable.
Right. And when you realize that, it loses its luster. Because when you see a Ferrari down the road, usually like, oh, that guy's like made it. But I always say, like, sometimes a Range Rover driver is driving a car much more expensive than the Lambo on the road.
This is true, particularly in areas like Los Angeles.
Right,
where
but you're
people-
not going to the Range Rover guy like, dude, I want your life lessons on how to be successful in life. But you see a Ferrari, you're like, dude, what'd you do for a living? Like, how'd you get this?
So Pejman, I got a question for you. You spent a lot of the last decade, I'm sure, teaching a lot of people.
A lot, yeah.
Are there some recurring themes that you see come across when you first start to meet somebody and they're asking you questions?
Recurring theme in what standard?
Like if them not knowing what to do or what's keeping them from obtaining their goals.
So there's two major setbacks people go through from buying their first exotic. We'll use the exotic as a means, but it's a larger picture of basically like kind of being afraid of being seen as wealthies. One of the big issues. People like are afraid of what people will think of them, or like I've had a lot of guys that are like, I don't know how people will respond to a red Ferrari, and I'm like, why does that matter?
It's imposter syndrome.
Yeah, well, it's this like fear of like, what if they think I'm like super rich or something, and they like hit me up for money? I'm like,
What does it matter?
Well, it doesn't. Like, but again, these are like limitations they create in their own heads. Always like fear of failure. Like, what if it doesn't work? Well, okay, then what happened? You start again, figure something else out. Who cares? But in their heads, like that's a big thing. That's why I don't know why it's so common, but it's like super common.
Because
amongst
society tells you can't.
right? But I'm saying they retain that and they
believe it,
live that way.
And they grew up their whole life like that, right?
Yeah, and the other limitation, which is really like, they want an exotic, but they really don't. So this is the other thing that's like really bizarre for
That's
people.
weird.
Yeah, I know, it's really weird. It's this paradox thing going on for them where they're like, I really want a Ferrari, but I'm afraid of what comes with a Ferrari in a couple of ways. They're afraid of like maintenance that's imaginary, which like in their head is like there. Even though I teach them, I'm like, you don't have to worry
There's
about
a
that.
schedule.
Right, but they're afraid of like all of it. They're afraid of like, what if? So they'll do this. They'll be like, I want to buy a $150K car, but I don't want it to cost not even a penny. And I'm like, okay, I get that I'm teaching you how to drive a car for free, but like the lifestyle of owning a Ferrari will enhance your expenditure generally. So they're approaching it from the wrong lens of like, I want it to be cheaper than my Lexus. And I'm like, you don't really want a Ferrari then. Like, because like that's not the idea. The idea is
Then you
not
just drive a Lexus.
right, but well, yeah, but you see, they don't think of it
Yeah,
that way.
yeah.
Like, and partially, I'm to blame for this because the marketing is really focused around like you can drive a Ferrari for less than a Lexus,
Mhm.
but in their head, they don't understand like that. People don't like you don't know what you don't know. So, not being in an environment where you realize how much your life is limited because you don't have a Ferrari or a Lamborghini, well, you don't realize what you're missing out on. So you live in your bubble.
Yeah.
Once you get your first one, you interact with people, you have new friends, you go places. It pushes you to be better. It pushes you to get in better shape because people are looking at you. It pushes you to get better at talking to people because people want to network with you. Like the change it creates internally is the one you don't expect. And some people are very afraid of that. And indirectly, they just create all kinds of reasons why they shouldn't try it because it's going to lead them to force them to becoming a new person. And
I get that.
it's really sad though. Like
Yeah.
it's really sad because it's like, everything you want is at the other side of trying something, even if it hurts a little bit, that discomfort's there.
Failure will oftentimes prevent people from even trying.
Yeah, but the discomfort of it, even though the system is proven it works, just makes people like really afraid of like getting in. Those are the two really common denominators that prevent people from really finding success.
Do you find that people, I mean, look, if I didn't know people that had taken your program and had really driving exotics today, I would probably look at it and be like, I don't know if I can trust this guy. Do you find that people are often hesitant because they don't understand? I also know I've seen the finances of a lot of wealthy people over time. I know they buy and sell cars for literally the same price they buy it, if not more over time.
Yeah.
And I know a couple guys who are in the market who literally buy unique spec cars just so they can make money on it when they ultimately decide to sell it, even if it's not in their intention right away.
100%. Yeah. That's what I do. I mean, I buy cars even though I don't want to sell them in a manner that guarantees the money's parked there.
Oh, yeah.
And that when I want to get rid of it, there's a return. Now,
Like that GTR you just picked up?
yeah,
Boy.
but that's a strict return car.
Yeah.
So I only bought that because I time markets and I know what's coming, and I'm like,
That's a
I'm
beautiful
gonna make
spec.
100 grand doing nothing.
Yeah.
You know, like that's a car where I'm like, I'm just gonna make money, so I'll just buy it, put it away. I have like 30 other cars. I don't have to drive that car.
Yeah.
You know, like it'll just sit there. It's good looking. It's good for marketing. I'll get rid of it to make a point that you can
Yeah.
make money off a car. But the main thing is, there are also cars that, as a car lover, I buy because I want to own, but I buy and spec them in a manner that guarantees that when I don't want them anymore, it's good. And I'm going to like make
Like
bank.
which one?
Like, for example, like I bought an A12 GTS knowing that I wasn't going to love it forever. So
Okay.
I'm like, hey, this isn't a special car. It's a cool car, but it's not a special
Very cool
car.
Yeah.
So let me spec something really special. So when it's time to sell, no matter the market goes up or down, production's out, someone's going to want that specific unit, you know, like, and I'll get bored of it. I'll want something else. But I know this going into it because like you get to know yourself and you get to be honest with like you don't really keep cars that, even if you collect, like you get bored of cars and you're like, oh, I don't drive that one, or it's not exciting anymore. There's better product, and you just kind of like go the next direction. So knowing that, like if you knew you were going to get divorced going into marriage, like if you knew that, right,
Yeah.
right away, you'd want to protect your assets,
It
right?
would
Because you're
change
like,
every decision you made.
exactly. So I would tell people, like, think about it the same way as a marriage. You intend to make the best of it, and your intention is to make it amazing. But if for any reason it doesn't work out because the car breaks down a lot, it's the wrong car, something happened, then you're not fucked.
Yeah.
Right? So like think about it that way. But if it works out and great, then who cares? You still have a beautiful car.
So
and
a
it's the
beautiful
most
car,
beautiful car.
You got a beautiful spec, and you just drive it as long as you want it.
Exactly.
But it's not just cars. You also have the Watch Trading Academy.
Yes. Because
So-
this all goes hand to hand.
It does go hand in hand. So I wanted to ask more about that because, first of all, I love watches. Don't judge me because I'm wearing an Apple Watch.
I am judging you for that.
I-
if you
I
drive a
see.
Tesla and wear an Apple Watch,
I don't drive a Tesla, but
it's going to be scary. That's a prerequisite to
You
that.
are in California,
It's a
so-
prerequisite. to
But my wife does drive a Tesla. So,
you see,
yeah,
I'm telling you, it's in the family.
it's
Soon
an-
enough, you're going to
it's-
take it and be like, I
it's
know
a-
it's fast.
It's an approximation, but it's from my reality. But I've always loved watches, particularly vintage watches, the same way with cars. But so what came first? Obviously, the cars sounds like it came first.
Cars have always been a personal passion,
Right.
so it was. And I never really owned a nice watch when I was like 18. And my dad gave me a nice watch. I never seen my dad, so he sent a nice watch when I was like 14 to my mom. Is like, hey, I'm still alive, whatever. I was like, I don't fucking know who that is, but I was like, I'll take your shit and I'll wear it. Great. And I had a nice watch, but I didn't really understand the value of it. But it made me feel different when I wore it, because I was in high school, like a nice watch, and I was like, oh, this is a cool thing, like it's different. And then when I turned, like when I bought my first Porsche, a lot of my friends had nice watches. So like now I'm meeting new people,
You're in the community, you see what they're doing.
And they all had like this watch brand called Panerai, and it was really nice. And I really like liked the design, and I was like, you know what? I want a Panerai. And it was like a $3,000, like at the time was a big deal. It was like $3,000 watch for a watch. I was like, okay, like let me go and like buy one. So I do all my research online, and I actually buy my first Panerai. And I'm like, okay, this is cool. And I like it, and I'm wearing it. And the guy I buy it from is in my Porsche club because he sells like watches. That's his job. He's like a jeweler. Sure. And I'm like, this guy also has the same Porsche I have, and he just bought a Lamborghini. So like when I bought the watch, I was like, hey, like what do you do? Like this is your hobby? Or like, he's like, no, I sell watches full time. And I'm like, you make that much money selling watches that you have not only the same Porsche I have, but you also just bought a Lamborghini and your house is epic. And I'm like, now I'm curious. I'm like, there's that much money in watches. So instead of being like, let me ask you everything in life about watches and I can rob you of all your knowledge and then fuck off it and go like be your competition, I was like, I'm your customer. I just bought something. I'm going to go and try to sell it. So I understand like if I bought it right or wrong and like based on what I can sell it for. So I was like, I was a salesman. I was like, I can sell shit. So I was like, I'm going to sell it. So I went online and like I sold the watch I bought after a year. And I was like, it's great. I made money. And I was like, imagine how much I would make if I would learn to buy it like he did. Because obviously he made money when he sold it to me, and I made money when I sold it. So he gave me a good deal because he was in the same club. But like, there's got to be a better way to buy this so I can make even more money. But when I realized that I was a banker, so it was like 20% return, and I didn't even have to hold it a year. I just chose to. So it was like, no wonder this guy's fucking rich. I was like, the math really maths,
scale of economy.
Yeah, right? It was like
you
really
buy
good.
one, you get 20%. You buy several,
and all my friends were buying watches from him. So I'm like, obviously, he's just in the groups talking about watches, and people are like all excited. So I started studying like because when I went to sell my watch, I saw where people were listing their watches and everything, and I was like, wow, it's amazing, like how big of a community this is. And this was back in the early 2000s. So I was like, you know what? Okay, like watches are starting to become popular on the secondary market. Like I understand what they are. So I said, you know what? I'm going to start like buying and selling watches. So I started doing it for like 6 watches instead of 1 watch like that I had in a box, and I would swap and go on Craigslist, buy, sell, offer whatever I could find. And I would just start trading watches. Then I realized that I was making almost the same as my banking job, salary while I was trading watches.
So you were still working at the banking job while you're trading?
Yeah. Okay. Like trading watches as a collector, not even like as a business.
Yeah.
And then when I kind of went into that business of cars, watches, and everything else, when I got fired from banking, like that's why watches became such a fake.
You got fired?
Dude, I got killed. Yeah.
Why?
I was an asshole. I used to drive.
Me too.
I used to drive a Lamborghini, like park in handicap spots. Like I would make my superiors really uncomfortable because they were like, dude, like you can't just you're flashing and
you weren't fitting any conventional norms.
No, but you know what happened? When I got fired the first time from banking, I got really upset because I had given that company everything. Like in a way, it was like it was my first real like corporate like legit job. That was like I had given, like I was like really paying attention. I was.
It makes you question your self-worth, even though it should only make you question your net worth.
Yeah, like it was the corporate. Like I had saved a ton of money, so I was okay financially. Yeah. I was making a ton of money, so I wasn't like struggling to like, oh my god,
you were young, you weren't married.
Yeah, exactly. Like I had all these opportunities going for me, but the one thing that was like really a big thing is I lost my identity when they fired me because I was like, I thought I would be a banker forever.
Yeah,
I thought I would be a banker forever.
Even today, you'll see 40, 50-year-olds who they self-identify as their job. You go, hey,
exactly.
Like tell me about yourself. They're like, oh, I'm a banker.
They hide behind their business card. And like the thing was, to me, it was the same thing. I was like, I wasn't even about the business card. I was about that company. Like I like legit believed in that company. So like when I got canned, and which was my own doing indirectly because I threw my badge and I thought they would call me the next day because I was like top performer. They never called me, so I fucked myself out of a job. I could have at least gotten a severance or something.
So you didn't get fired. You had a disagreement.
No, I got fired because I basically told them that I didn't want to answer their questions, and I was like, take my badge, and then I was like, oh, the CEO is going to call me tomorrow because like you don't lose your best executive.
Gotcha.
They never fucking called me. They just called me to tell me to fuck off, and I was done. But when I lost that, it took me a year to really like understand what like I wanted to do, and I realized how insignificant I was in the world. because I had put so much weight on this idea that I was a banker. And I was like, in my head, I was like, I'm not like a banker. I'm an executive banker at this bank. And like, you just took that from me. And then I realized, I was like, no, you didn't. It took me a year to realize this, but I was like, you didn't take away my skill or the fact that I'm a banker. You took away my title and who I can do it for. Yeah. So then I realized, I said, you know what? Fuck you. I'm a banker for me. So I started my first bank on my own for cars, watches. All right. Like very, very early, like this was fucking 2007. I started this company that was basically like, hey, I'm going to buy cars, watches, and art. And I'm going to put other people's money in it. And I'm going to make market predictions and basically like play cars and watches like stocks. And basically like buy, sell, but with other people's money. So we got like 4 people together to buy Bugatti, you know, and like basically like it wasn't my money, but I was like, I knew where to get the car. I knew how to buy it. I knew how to sell it. So I started transacting in that. And I was like,
you
I'm
started
still
with Bugatti.
Yeah, I'm still a banker.
Yeah.
You know, but I wasn't my cars. Like, so, and the one thing I'm really big on, I always differentiate for people because I know like there's this huge thing. Like there's car dealers that own like 100 cars in their lot. And they'll be like, I own 100 cars. I'm like, no, you're a car dealer with 100 cars. You don't own 100 cars. There's a difference
are owned by the bank. Yeah.
They're owned by the bank. They're owned by your business. That's fine. But that's money needed to make money. Like, that's why I'm like always telling people, I'm like, today when I tell people I have like 30 car collection or it goes up to 40, sometimes comes down. I tell people, I'm like, these are personal registered cars. These are not like a dealership's cars. These are not like floor plan cars. These are not like,
I think differentiates you, by the way. I know
that's
a lot of people who
difference,
show
right,
huge difference. I know a lot of people who have big car collections.
They're all under a dealer tag or they're like, correct. Yeah.
And to me, that's always been a pet peeve.
No, and I'm telling you, and that's why I'm really big on that. That's why even as I tell my story, I tell people, I'm like, in the 2000s when I had these cars, like not my own 1 or 2 personal cars, but when I was buying Bugattis, when I was buying like Saleen S7s and like really exciting shit, I never put it anywhere, not on social media, not on anything, because it wasn't my shit. I was like, this is business money. Like, I'm here to make money. I'm not here to pretend to be richer than I am. I don't give a shit. I was like, I want these cars to make money. I want these people to make money so they give me more money. So I keep going. Yeah. So I use my banking skills combined with alternative assets like cars, watches, handbags, anything I could find.
They're not so alternative anymore either.
Since 2020. Since 2020. Well, so I predicted that too. Like, I knew that COVID would be the trigger point for the entire mainstream of alternative assets. Why do you think that was?
Because there was clearly a pop in buyers during that time.
So a lot of dealers pre-COVID, right before, like there was that January to March where there was a lot of uncertainty about Europe had closed. They were like, the country might close. There's this pandemic. We don't know what it is. People are fucking dying. Yep. And I'm still buying cars. I don't give a shit. I'm doing my thing. You know, for myself, I'm like, oh, this is a good deal here. And like, I'm buying. And all my dealer friends are like, are you out of your mind? Like, why are you buying cars? Like,
no one's gonna buy cars from you.
Everything's gonna be on discount, and dude, wait till like the country's gonna potentially close, and everything's gonna be free and cheap. And I was like, yeah, I'm just gonna buy cars now. They're like, no, you should do that. The one thing they didn't pay attention to then, which they're now very much paying attention to now, is they didn't realize that supply chain held a lot of weight in the equation, and supply chain had already been shut down for months in Europe. And so what they hadn't encountered, even though in their head they were like, everything's going to be on discount. In my head, I was like, there ain't going to be anything there for you to buy. Like, I get like the idea of the discount.
Supply shrinks, demand stays even the same. You still have a higher price product.
Exactly. So the part they were paying attention to demand that was going to crash right after COVID because everybody was going to be afraid and they didn't know what's going on. But they weren't paying attention to supply. So I was looking at the supply chain and it was like, ain't shit coming in. You got a whole bunch of people stuck at home. What are you going to buy? You buy cars. So I was like, the one thing I know is that people jump on markets when they think it's easy money. Like think about like the mortgage market and, you know, like pre-bubble, right? Like strippers were mortgage brokers. Like, meaning like that's the
real estate agents.
Everybody was like your cousin in the cab game, you know, to give you a mortgage application, right? Because it's easy money. So it brought a lot of attention to how mortgages worked, what they are, because streamlined people, day-to-day people that shouldn't play in that game, suddenly needed to get educated to make money in that game.
And they all did.
Exactly. Yeah. They did until they didn't, right? And then the readjustment happened and they all lost a lot of money and they all kept
There are more realtors falling out of business now than ever before.
Yeah. Exactly. So that was the same thing that was happening in watches. I was like, watches are gaining value. They're gaining popularity. And I was like, when they pop, you're going to have mainstream media start to play into watches. And I knew this was happening. I had started Watch Trading Academy, and like we were teaching this since 2009. You know, it's like so.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
Okay,
exactly. A lot of people
Wow,
think
yeah.
I've like they've seen my stuff since like 2018, 2019. I've been around. I've been teaching online since 2007. Then 2009 was when we started launching courses. 2011 when we started launching book course deals, etc. And in 2015, these became platforms from these smaller courses into giant platforms. So it's been going on for a while.
I mean, you've got a big group of people.
I know,
mean,
but people
tens of
think that
thousands.
this is built like
Yeah,
when they see me on
overnight.
like showing them an ad, they're like, "What's this like today scam?" And I'm like, "I've been around for like a long time
Yeah,
talking about
yeah.
the same shit, doing the same shit, and like teaching the same shit." And today we have a lot of people making a lot of money, but we knew after 2020 that like when that happened, and the public saw the price jump,
Mhm.
they would be all in. I can just go to my Rolex guy and get a watch and make some money. It's like, yeah. It was the whole mortgage thing all over again in the
Yeah, if it
alternative
was only
asset.
that simple, though. There's an education that goes with that,
Well,
unfortunately.
so it was simple in 2020 because it was very simple in 2020. And that's where mainstream media started playing. And that's where we knew values would start to skyrocket.
Because there's all those reports of Rolex dealerships and authorized dealers not having supply.
Exactly,
And
yeah.
people started freaking out. And then what happens is like, oh, there's a wait list. You got to get on the wait list.
So all of these things became, they were always there, but they became more about every watch instead of just a few watches.
And every brand.
Exactly. So
Every
even
brand.
brands that you never
Yeah.
looked at suddenly became worth more money. And again, mainstream started playing. So we were equipped to take advantage of that. We had been doing it for a while. Our students got really rich, even richer than ever. I mean, my best year, I made like $4 million trading watches as a hobby, like literally from doing it part-time.
It's a pretty good hobby.
Exactly. And that was, during those peaks. But even then, I wasn't blind to that's not going to last forever. And I was like, this is like a phase, it's going to last. On average, I'll make like 1.5 million, 2 million a year trading watches as a part-time thing without a store, without mass levels of inventory. And the way we dictate if you're a good watch trader or not, if you're not a store dealer, is if you can duplicate the money that's out in watches once a year. So basically, if you go in with $1 million in inventory, you can turn it to $1 million in profit.
Wow.
Then that's when you're the most efficient. Basically, like that's the efficiency ratio of like being a great watch trader. So whenever people are like, "Oh, I made like 20 grand this month," and I'm like, "Great. Well, how much money do you have out in watches?" And they're like, "Oh, 600 grand." I'm like, "Yeah, you're an idiot."
Didn't see that coming, but it's true. Like, there's scales of economies of efficiency. Do you find that a problem is so like with my friend, right, Adam? He didn't tell me he took your course until I told him you were coming on the program, and then he was like, "Oh yeah, I know him." I'm like, "Wait, what? What do you mean you know him?" And he's like, "Well, I took exotic car hacks. Like I paid for his course."
Okay, so I'm everyone's favorite secret drug dealer
That's
for
what I was gonna
for a
ask.
couple
Like,
of reasons.
Do people
Okay.
not want to give away the secret?
When I was starting to teach exotic car hacks, I had a like semi-mentor friend client named Tim Sykes. He's really famous, penny stock trader. Timothy Sykes, yeah, like
know who he
he's a
is.
huge following, etc.
Yeah.
So he was getting very popular when I started teaching online.
He teaches courses too, right? He has,
Yeah, like
a program.
huge,
Yeah,
huge,
yeah.
huge.
Okay,
Like we're a 9-figure business. Like been doing it for a long time. Very effective, and he's also not liked very much because he's very polarizing. And his he goes after penny stocks. So they call him the real wolf of Wall Street because he actually follows penny
He didn't
stocks.
go to jail for it. But
Yeah, exactly. Like because he does this, right?
Yeah.
He does pumps and dumps, etc., and it works. The one thing that he taught me that I learned from watching his operation, he didn't directly like mentor me, but I kind of watched how he operates and how he moves. I went to him with the idea of exotic car hacks. And I said, "Hey, I'm doing this thing. I'm teaching cars and everything else." And I said, "Sell it to your audience because you're teaching all these people to make money in stocks. So like put me in a coach, help me like get this to people." And he was like, "I can't sell this to people." And I go,
Really?
Why? It's like super popular. People are buying it, like so early.
Yeah.
He goes, "I'll tell you what, because if I tell people that I get my exotics this way, then they think I'm poor. They think I don't have enough money."
Oh.
So there's this quotation to it.
Mm.
Get it? That
Yeah,
like if people like there's the effect of exotic car ownership. It's about baller status. Like I'm rich, I'm this.
Mm-hmm.
If people start to discover this affordable aspect of it, like which they're going to, that you like it or not, because that's my job, right?
Yeah,
To
yeah.
market that and get it out there. But if they discover that, it loses the luster you get by telling that. So if you tell someone you got a Ferrari, they admire you. If you tell someone they got a Ferrari and it didn't cost you anything, for the majority of times, that loses that luster. So Like, we knew this was an anti-marketing aspect.
Society's so messed up.
Yes, but it's a reality. Like, we know this happens. So, like, I understood that early on, that I was going to run against that train, that it was like, I'm training the entire internet on how to do this, but only the guys that, like, get it, that are in the know. But I was like, they're not going to help me promote it, even though I'm helping them, and this would be very useful.
No, they're going to gatekeep a secret.
Exactly.
They don't want people to know that.
Exactly.
And they want people to say, like, oh my God, this guy's worth a ton of money. Look at how much money he's blowing. And they don't realize this is an investment strategy for him.
Exactly. So they don't so that was the thing with exotic car hacks. On the watch side, much easier, because everybody wants to learn how to make money. And the more student success we had with, holy shit, I made $1 million trading watches. Look, my student made 500K. This other student made 200K. They're like, crazy. You know, like, how do I get on? But even watch people don't like me, because it had the reverse effect there, where when I started teaching watches, dealers hated me, because they're like, you're exposing how much crazy money we're making in the world, because they don't know we're this rich. And so it started, like, really pissing off people. I made a lot of jeweler enemies, because they were like, dude, I was making 30K a watch, but because of you now I'm making 5K, because they know how to buy them and they know what to pay for them, and you're exposing all my margins. And I'm like, look, that's the way the world works. Like, Auto Trader made the buying cars competitive, because you could actually see what a car was worth in California when you lived in Ohio or Indiana, right?
Robinhood did the trading stocks.
Right, but again, people don't like this. So we started making a lot of enemies in the dealer space, because they were like, well, you're just killing our customers, because you're making people believe they can all make money. And I was like, they can make money, and they will make money, because the industry is growing, and dealers were obviously uncomfortable because they were losing margin. And our students started making more money than dealers, because they were learning to do this without the overhead, without all the bullshit. Because you see, like, the majority of the watch market focuses on the 3 core brands: Patek, AP, Rolex. Like, they think of, that's the watch market. Those are it's like the S&P, right? It's like, this is the core of what the whole market is.
Those are your blue chips. That's your 500.
Yeah, that's your big thing.
But there's other investments out there.
Correct. But those are like what people, like in the dealer space, or even just naturally, people, when they hear watch, like expensive watch, they go Rolex, or I've heard like a rapper talk about our APRM or something like that. They generally like stop there. What I started teaching people was very different, because I said, what is it that jewelers don't like? All these other brands, like, they don't like Cartier, Hublot, and everything else. So they shoot it so cheap. It's like pawn shop mentality. They basically buy it so cheap, but they sell it for a high price, but they just don't like it. They don't want that stuff because it doesn't move. So when we started teaching Watch Trading Academy, I was like, why don't we teach the hardest part of the industry first, which was how to buy the stuff jewelers don't want, how to market it, how to sell it correctly, and how to make the margins so that you're not interfering with what jewelers are doing by taking their trades.
And then you can step up to the bigger game later on.
Yes, but what that meant was you had a strong foundation for buying and selling, not the low-hanging fruit, but you had built the ladders to get to the top of the tree. And that was the piece that people missed in this. So, like, our equation was very different. We were taking people that weren't watch people, that weren't with the notion that Rolex is it and everything else, even though it had a $500 margin and $10,000 watch. I was like, this is stupid. I was like, I'd rather have a $5,000 margin on a $4,000 watch, make $5,000 on my 4K investment.
Yeah.
It takes longer, but that's one transaction. And I made 10 times what selling 10 Rolexes would be. So, like, it doesn't make sense. So I was like, this is a better strategy, but it's harder. So it took more effort on our side to support our students to have more success, because it was harder to have the success. But now that we do, even when the markets crashed and after COVID, everything got cheap and high and, like, everything moved, our students were impacted. So they were making bank while jewelers were scrapping because Rolex prices were dropping after the pandemic was over, and everybody now is like, oh, we don't have money anymore, so things are changing and we don't need money watches. So that really didn't, impact our students. Our students continuing to make more money. And it took me 3 years to make the first 100K club member, meaning it took me 3 years to teach a guy to make 100K trading watches.
Oh, wow.
Crazy, right?
Yeah.
Now I crown a new 100K club member every week.
So, I mean, you post these guys on your social media. I've seen them in your stories.
Every single week, one new 100K club member.
For the record. I just stalk you.
I noticed, yeah. 100K means that they've made $100,000 in net profits after 12 months.
Okay.
Then we have a 250K club, a 500K club, $1 million club.
That's meaningful extra income if people have full-time jobs.
I mean, these are executive level money. Like for people that have normal W-2 money.
Yeah, I told a report the other day for U.S. News that I know more people who work a typical W-2 job that have a side hustle today than ever before. Yeah, ever before.
100%.
That's the new 401k.
Yeah.
your side hustle is your 401k. And if people can make an extra $100,000, that's doubling some people's salaries.
Because people have stopped waiting for money later. That's the difference.
Because they don't want to enjoy life when they're 65.
Exactly. Because that idea, which we talked about at the beginning of the show, which is this idea of retirement and what you've been told and how life works.
Yeah.
Well, it may be been told to you that way, but social media and the internet has shown you another side that doesn't look that way. Like, it's showing you 30-year-olds in Ferraris and Lamborghinis. It's showing you 20-year-olds, wearing 100K watches. And that triggers people. First, it triggers people to get pissed because they're like, well, what are they doing that they can do this and I can't do that? And two, it's also making people realign their thoughts on what should my life look like? What can it look like? And how come that's happening and it's not happening to me? So my greatest kind of happiness comes from when success triggers curiosity. That's super important because success only triggers two things. It's either curiosity or envy. So I want success to trigger curiosity. And that's why I'll come across maybe not liked, but I'm like, if you're curious enough to follow through, then you'll eventually find the answer, right? But
your DMs must be really interesting.
Oh, people hate me, dude. Like my YouTube comments are the best. Like, I haven't seen YouTube comments. My YouTube comments are the best. People don't fucking like me.
Really? Wow.
And I love it because I actually personally take my Sundays and answer people on YouTube. Yeah. And I'll have some really fucked up answers.
That's your church?
Yeah, but
you
really
go
fucked
to church
up
every
answers,
Sunday to YouTube and you make sure.
Yeah. I don't care. I have no filter. My team sometimes has to lock me out of my YouTube because they're like, dude, you need to stop insulting people because they'll start and I'm like, okay, let me just finish because I'm.
But there is that mentality, unfortunately. People don't want. I mean, Saied and I get it all the time on the show. We'll give people that otherwise normal sound advice, but it runs against what they think is normal or what they think is.
But I've never been attacked by someone who is wealthier or equally successful in their own right, even if it's not in my field.
Yeah, you won't. It's not their way.
Yeah, I've never no one has ever come to me and be like they may have said I don't agree with you or I don't like you, but they've never attacked what I do. Like, oh, this is a scam, this is bullshit, this that. But they may have said I don't agree with that thought you had about this car or that, which is more of a friendly kind of competitive.
It's like social circles. People in your social group want you to stay where you're at.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's why whenever somebody in a social group makes it, everybody else typically falls away.
Yeah,
right? And they're like, oh, I lost all my friends. Well, no, your friends. Yeah, they weren't exactly the same. And that's where it changes. But Saied and I have this conversation all the time where people take religion, politics, and money. That is the instant fight to start with anybody.
Yeah, because it has a social kind of level to it, and it makes people kind of go you can be Democrat or Republican. You have a clear construct of where it is, and there is two experiences in life, which is poverty or wealth. It's always at war.
It's extremism, and people love to point the finger at somebody else on the opposite side of the extremism.
Even when people used to pick, I remember when I used to talk about success when I wasn't that rich, but I used to tell people that here's why you need to get rich. They were like, well, what about trust fund kids? And I'm like, listen, at some point or another, someone paid the price for that kid to have that fund. And
I'm like, my son's a trust fund kid.
Right, so that's the argument I was making. I'm like, why do you work? What, you want to leave your kids with fucking nothing? They're like, no. Then I'm like, well, someone else made it before you, left that kid with something significant, which you're trying to accomplish now, or you hope your kids accomplish for their kids.
And the kid's not a problem because of it.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? They have opportunities.
But there's this envy and this hate that oh, this kid has this and I worked 30 years and I don't have this. So that's why I said success either triggers envy or curiosity. And to me, it's always been curiosity before anything else. If you're curious enough to know why people are how they are, it doesn't mean that's your path to getting there. It means it's one more reinforcement that you can get there. And I think that's the one thing I had even as a kid. It was I would pay people to sit with them, even in banking. I was like, hey, I'll give you $20 to just have coffee with me and tell me your life story for just 30 minutes. And my clients were like, why? And I'm like, because your account's really large and I want to know how you got there. And they were like, wait, this is a banking thing? I'm like, no, it's a personal thing. I'm your banker anyways. If you ever need a favor, I'll give you my cell phone. You can do whatever. I'll take care of it. But just talk to me, tell me what it is. And they would tell me oh, I'm in export import, or I'm in this, or I'm in textile, and I'm this. And I was like, I don't really want to do these things. So I'm not oh, I should do that too because you're rich. I was like,
but there's commonalities in wealthy people.
It wasn't even about that. It was the idea that that guy made it in that guy made it in that guy made it in that. And these are completely different things, which means that I don't have to pick something like everyone else to make it too. I can pick something completely different and also make it. It's 3 more reasons that random people doing something completely random I didn't even hear of,
Mhm.
like made it.
Yeah.
And then so in my head, I was like, it's reinforcement that I can make it. Instead of being like, oh, like people today, they're like, what's the next industry to be in? I'm like, the next industry you're willing to commit 10 years to is the industry to be in. And they're like, no, but what's the next one to make money in? I'm like, I just told you that answer. You just don't want to hear it because you're looking for me to say, here is how I made it. Here's your step-by-step guide on doing it.
And go do it. Yeah.
Right. And they're like, that's what I want to do. And I'm like, you're not
That's
going
what's
to,
been beaten into
but
them
you're
in school.
not, but you're not going to do it anyways. Even if I told you step by step what you had to do to make $1 million, and you knew exactly that there was a guaranteed million behind it, you would still fall off halfway through.
So we did this. We told people, you want to make $1 million? We'll tell you right now how to have $1 million at the time you're 65. Like, whoa, no, I want it now. You're like, okay, well, look, if you put money in the S&P and you put this investment in, go invest. You'll have $1 million. The problem is you don't want $1 million like that. You want $1 million now. Well, if you want that, that's a different conversation.
Right. And that's called gambling.
Yeah.
Right. So what you want is you want to gamble in hopes of winning. And so when you try to stop that, then you come across as the asshole trying to block someone's dream.
I'm pretty much that guy all the time anyways. Yeah,
well, me and you both. So
yeah.
commonality.
So
I'm always the dream killer.
So Pejman, we talk about routinely on this show that a lot of financial habits for people tend to get built in by the age they're 7 years old. And
Which is crazy when you think about it.
Yeah, it's a study that came out of Purdue. Is any of this from your upbringing, or is the majority of this self-taught?
No, I remember I told you, I guess, at the beginning of this, self-awareness was always key. And my mom, like my upbringing, my mom was a single mother. Like we were well off in Iran, but after the revolution, basically became broke in France, refugees, and everything went the opposite direction, of like money.
Yep.
And so all my youth, after like 2-3 years old, which I don't even remember, was basically lived in poverty. And poverty being below the threshold where you had enough money. Now, we had shelter, we had food. So give my mom credit for the sake that we weren't in below survival mode, But she did have to make choices at times if she ate or I ate, during the earlier stages. But there was one thing that I knew about my mom, and it was that as I grew older, and I kind of watched my mom, I had learned that my mom would save money like crazy and was like super careful because we didn't have that much money. So she's really careful and very, very resourceful, very crazy, like effective on like making money work because we had such limited amounts. But as I grew older, instead of embodying that in that saving mentality, like, because my mom would keep saying, like, oh, you're making money now, this job, it's a big job, and you're making money, you got to save X amount of your, you got to save X amount. But I looked at my mom and I was like, but you don't have the things I want. I was like, and while you're like probably the best role model for many different things in my life,
it's hyper insulting to people, though.
Right? But you have the best role model for a lot of things that you've done very well, and because of you, I've learned not to give up. Always push for things, even when you're told no. She used to return things to try to save us some money.
You're not a bad person for wanting more.
No, and I never felt like because I always felt that just because my mom's outcome was not what she wanted to get rich, it didn't work, didn't mean that my outcome was limited to that. But I knew something that I took very personally for my mom's sacrifice, because she sacrificed her whole life to make sure I had a decent life. She never got remarried. She never went after her career anymore. She just did whatever she had to just raise me.
It sounds a lot like my mom, by the way.
Right. So the one thing I learned from my mom that like I just honored from my mom was the fact that I couldn't become a regular lawyer. I couldn't become a regular successful person because I would just substitute what she could have done with what I did. So I had to make up for her loss of 20 years by getting so successful or so ahead that it would offset that sacrifice. So like to me, it was basically a black and white game. I was like, I gave you 20 years to have a chance at life, not 20 years so you can have a chance at survival. So it was like, go figure out what life looks like.
People confuse that though, man. They think survival is life.
Of course, because they don't have aspirations. But like for me, when I saw, like I said, it triggered curiosity. When I saw people living that well, when I saw my first Ferrari, I was like, amazing that someone can drive a car like that on a street and not get like hit or something happening. When I saw a guy walking around in my bank with a $30,000 watch on, in my head, I was like, okay, this guy is wearing what I have in my bank account, like my entire life that I've accumulated so far. And this dude is like wearing this as if it's nothing, as like a pleasure. And I'm like, how amazing. I'm like, that's just nuts.
Says something. I'll never forget the first time I recognized a watch. It was a gold day presidential
same
band,
thing here. Yeah, of course,
right?
Because that was the players' watch.
That was the players' watch. And I remember
Wall
it
Street
vividly.
watch. Yeah.
I remember thinking to myself, like, who is this guy? what is he doing?
And
it
that's the thing.
it
Like,
triggered the hell out of me.
right. And that's why I said it either triggers curiosity or envy. And if
Mm-hmm.
you have that within you to be able to shift envy to curiosity,
Mm-hmm.
then you can truly make yourself into whatever you want, because you will learn how other people have done what they've done, what their traits they've used, what steps they've used, and you'll start to realize what you're willing to do or how badly you're willing to work to also get there.
My mom and dad divorced when I was young, and my mom barely had it. She was a registered nurse. She worked at the hospital for the mentally handicapped until she was much older. We never to this day, we've never fought about a single thing. My mom had, like your mom, had a lot of things that I admire to this day, respect the hell out of her. To go that long in your life and have a child like me who's
Yeah, exactly.
you know,
I would say I was a terrible kid too.
and not fight with me.
Yeah.
And not argue me and just be able to like be a leader was incredible. But the other side is I always looked at my mom's life and thought like, okay, look, I love you, but you were not in the financial position that I want to be in.
Mhm.
And now it's weird, and I don't know what your relationship is with your mom today, but my mom and I talk.
I
all
mean,
the
I
time.
still take care of my mom to
Yeah,
this day.
Me too.
Anyway.
Bought her a
Yeah.
house, paid for the cars. But to this day, when I talk to my mom, she says to me like, you would not have been in the position you're in today had you have stayed with me and did the things that I told you to do financially.
Well, of course, because they didn't know how to. If they did, they would have done it too.
Yeah, they
That's-
bought into the American dream.
Yeah.
And you work hard and put your head down and do all those things, which look good for you during your time. And look, I am where I'm at today and you are where you are today, but that is not my dream.
Hmm.
My dream is more.
I mean, look, I saw the same thing happen, and my uncle was like a father to me growing up, you know, and he was a big shot executive when I came to America in a hotel, you know, like, so he's that guy, and he was corporate America, and he would bought in the dream. We both got fired. Like, you know, I got fired from banking.
him
He got
too.
fired.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he went back and drank the Kool-Aid, and he kept going. You know, he's like, next job, etc.
Yeah.
And I was like, nah, I ain't doing that shit. You know, like, that's it. I was like, I drank the Kool-Aid.
Yeah,
I thought it was going to get me there. And then this time I went and got a consulting job to pay myself to make sure like could continue to grow. But I didn't buy into it again. You know, that was the difference.
Yeah,
like he bought into it again. He was all about like the team new hotel, you know, and like
Right,
new
right.
direction. And for me, it was the opposite. I was like, F that. This time it's all about me. You know,
So what
like I'm
happened
gonna. Unfortunately, he died. He
Oh,
actually
yeah.
just had pancreatic cancer recently and just passed
Sorry to
away.
hear
But
about that.
but he never shifted his mind into that like next phase. You know, like what it could be. And he did well as an executive.
Right.
But he never lived the life he wanted to. He still lived with significant limitations.
So he saw your life though, and he saw the changes.
And it created a sense of jealousy.
Oh no.
It did. You know, it's done that in my entire family with everyone. Like
Yeah.
first off, half my family doesn't understand what I do for a living because they don't understand the scale of like how big our organization is. So they just can't do the math. You know, like
Well,
in
it's
their
easier
head.
to put their head into the ground.
Yeah, but they don't understand.
Yeah.
It's just, like the math to them is like so far from their capacity that they're just like, I don't know, like you can't, you know, they think I sell courses enough to have like a $30 million car collection, you know, and
Yeah, it makes sense.
you know, like, I'm like, I don't know where, but like, okay. So like, that's all they think I do, you know, and they're like, oh,
Yeah.
okay, well, he just sells courses on the internet. So like,
Right.
why is he this rich? Like, I don't understand. You know, like they can't put two and two together. So
Yeah.
instead of investigating, talking to me or anything, it's more like them versus me kind of
It's
thing. So-
crazy why people just don't ask the question, right?
but
like,
again,
it-
but what did I just tell you?
I know,
Envy versus
I know.
curiosity.
But
Like
it's still insane to me that there are people to the. So Saied knows this. I had a group of friends who literally were describing me as a drug dealer,
yeah, but that was me too growing
and
up.
I'm
It
like,
was the
"You're my
same thing.
friends.
It was the same thing.
You're
growing
my
up, man.
friend." Shahab, who we both know, knows it. Like the same group, same crew was like, "Oh, you know, he's lying or he's." It's funny how people will always label you something
Correct, 100%.
instead of just ask you a question because they know the answer is probably not going to make them feel good about themselves.
Well, they don't, you know, they don't want to know the answer. They don't really care. It's more about trying to put themselves at a high level, or on an even playing field, even though they're not. And this is what like people think they matter. Because one of the questions I get a lot, they go, "Do you think because you have more money than me, you're a better person?" And I usually say yes, and it pisses them off. And I'll say yes for a couple of reasons. I'm like, take away your view of money as the evil thing and whatever, and that it's disconnected from life. The fact that I've learned how to create a resource at a significantly faster pace than you, and I've learned to leverage that resource to create an ecosystem larger than you'll ever be in, makes me a much more resourceful human. So yes, even though we could argue that the word better is subjective because you don't even know how to label that today. Let's just say that if better was just a scale, of impact, of money, of anything.
Mhm.
Yes, I've done things much greater than you. So yes, in the scale, I'm at a higher level than you. And that's what people don't like to hear. You know, like,
If we were playing a video game, it's quantifiable.
yes, exactly. But life is a video game. So
Mhm.
it is quantifiable. It's
Right.
just that the emotion involved with it
Mhm.
just makes you feel less. So then you'll pick on something. You'll be like, well, you know what? Oh, you know what? You're like 2% extra body fat, and I can tell you know, like when you wear a shirt, you're not like perfectly ripped. And I'm like, okay, if my goal in life was to be ripped, I would be ripped and jacked. And if that's what I wanted my life to look like, that's the difference.
Mhm.
I could do that in 6 months. The difference is you couldn't do what I do in the next 6 months. So there is a scale to things and a priority of things. Or people will say, well, I have a great family. Okay, so do I. Like, you don't have to have some competitive edge on something.
And this is the thing. I hear this a lot.
But
I hear
that's
this a
how it
lot,
works.
And this
That's-
bothers me.
that's
is
how it works.
Everybody automatically assumes that I'm a terrible dad.
Yes.
Chris, you're working 16 hours a day. That doesn't make me a bad
Correct.
father.
Well, they assume that if you've had success in something, it's because you're giving up your soul. And so therefore,
No.
now you don't have any emotions or feelings.
I've got a partner who believes in what I do. She's just as part of the brand
but they don't.
as much
But they
of the
don't
brand
think.
as I am.
But remember, envy requires people to feel. Again,
It's
it
crazy.
requires to bring themselves up to a playing field. And why do you think it triggers people when they're like, "Do you think you're better than me?" I'm like, "Yes," and they're like, "That's a trigger word for them." And the reason I do it is because there's nothing positive that's going to come out of that conversation when that question's engaged.
Well, it challenges people to look at themselves.
So it doesn't matter.
You know, positive or
but
not,
it-
the outcome could be good.
Yeah,
If
but they
somebody
won't.
looks in the mirror afterward and goes, you know what, I want better.
If you need external motivation
Mm.
to become successful, you're only looking for external motivation to get you kicked up, only to fall back down because the next motivator won't come along. So,
Right.
so that you can never be successful. If money is the direct root of your happiness, it will fall off. If progress is the direct root of your happiness, it'll forever stand. So the real difference is that you can make progress in money too. And
Mhm.
that's why it gives you a false sense of happiness, like for that moment, because you
Yeah.
got the next new car, the next new
It's
house.
dopamine.
Exactly.
It's simple.
Exactly. But
Mhm.
internal progress is key. So if you make, that's why a lot of people make a ton of money and are incredibly unhappy in life
Mhm.
because they're not progressing in other metrics of their life.
And they're not chasing the dopamine.
And they're getting all the money, but eventually the effect of it wears out. It's the same with marketing or anything else. Like the first impact is always huge. Your first exotic's always big. Then the next one's less. The next one's less. After, like today, I can tell you every single car I buy, I don't give a shit. I could buy another Bugatti, I'd put it there. I'd be like, I don't want to drive it. I'm too busy till Thursday. But if it was my first car, I'd be like, oh my God, let's call like my 50 friends. Let's go out. Let's go
Yeah,
here.
yeah.
Let's park it here. Let's take a photo shoot here. Let's go talk here. Like it was all about the excitement, right? Like, and that dies off over time. I mean, it's the same thing with design. You see a beautiful house, you think it's amazing. You see 10 beautiful houses. You're like, this is cool. Like your excitement to like go explore it keeps going down. Like,
Yeah.
that's how our eyes are set. So our bodies historically just are built for progress because time only moves forward. So you only need things to increase. You never want to go backwards. You never go, I ate at a restaurant. I hope the next one is worse. You're like, I'm going to try to find a better place. I hope
Yeah,
this
I
place.
want a better experience.
Exactly. Even if you had a great restaurant next to you, you don't go like, I'm just going to eat there because I know it's great.
You get
You
bored.
eventually go, I'm going to try something else. And you could have worse before, but eventually you're like, I found better. That place is better than that place. And
The
it's
dopamine dies out, and then you find another place.
exactly. So these evolutionary traits, when you're young, you evolve very fast, quick, because these changes happen very large. But at some point, you get to the top, and there isn't that much more stimulation. Like the top Lamborghini isn't that much better than the top Ferrari. So like they're like on the same scale. So progress starts to look inwards only once you've reached that experience threshold where it's so high that you can't top it anymore. And you start looking at all these other experiences you're lacking in your life, and you start bringing those up to that level. That's why owning an exotic car can help you significantly. I always connect exotic cars to consciousness, and people are like, I don't get that.
I mean, you've written about it.
Right, but
I
they're
mean,
like
yeah.
spirituality and cars. Like, what the fuck are you talking about, right? Like, but the reality is, there's two reasons why exotic cars trigger consciousness. First off, they elevate the experience of ownership to a level of community, people, and new higher level experiences. Hotter car, hotter restaurants, hotter houses. You have a really hot car in an average house, you eventually want to upgrade your house, so you push harder.
Yeah.
You keep going. You know, like it's this lifestyle you go into that pushes you up. The second piece is the untalked about part, which is the experience of the drive. So you buy a car to go from point A to point B. You buy an exotic to experience point A to point B. These are two completely different things. One is control of time. The other one is forced through time, meaning you have to get somewhere to do something, right? So time's ahead of you. The other one, you're enjoying the time to get there. So these are two completely different things. Now, when you get in an exotic car, you're also not just focused on the speed of getting there, which is, again, what poor people think. Why does your car get there faster? The speed limit's the same. No correlation whatsoever. It's not just about the experience of the drive, but it's also the touching of all the other pieces of excellence that have come together to create that. Like, how many robots came together to create a Kia that no one gave a shit about so that you can be a consumer? And how many people's racing heritage, comfort heritage, design heritage came together to build the most epic Ferrari they could find so that only 30 people could actually buy one because they only made 30.
Yeah.
And that experience is not just the people that came together to build it, it's the generations of expertise that came before that got that product to that level, saying that's the experience you're supposed to have when you drive a car. And so the highest level of collective conscious experience came together around that topic and said, this is the best product of what humans can experience today, based on what we know of what we can do in the expert phases of our lives and experiences we brought here together to get you to buy this. And there's only 30 people in the world that'll be lucky enough to experience it.
And share that experience.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so there is so much power that goes into being behind the steering wheel of that power of collective consciousness that came together to make that 10-minute, 50-minute, 2-hour experience happen that does not exist or even is on the same playing field when you have a Honda, a Kia, or something else that just gets you, that was created in a means to be transactional in nature. It's like you need this to get from point A to point B. You'd like to be comfortable. We put lumbar support. You'd like to have some music. We put a Bluetooth player for you.
Utility is not the same thing.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So utility and experience are two completely different things.
I like to tell people when they question this, there's a video on YouTube, and I got to find it at some point in time, showing how the hand-painted option on the side of a Ferrari, how long it takes.
It's amazing. Yeah.
It's an amazing process. It takes days and days and days.
If I can get it, I always get it.
Yeah,
I don't care. It's like 30, 40 grand. I always pay for it.
It's worth it. It's about 40.
It's worth
but
it, yeah.
but it's worth it. But
worth it.
It's an incredible thing. People see it. They'll walk by a Ferrari and they'll see it. They won't even understand what that logo represents and that it's an option you actually pay for. They go, oh, it's like on the side of the sticker on the side of my BMW. Not the same.
Yeah, no, but in what it creates, the feeling it creates when you look at it is just different.
It's a huge sense of pride.
But look at how it's what we call a micro feeling, because an average person looks at a shield on a Ferrari and looks at that painted thing and sees the same thing. So that experience of that really hand-drawn shield is not meant for everyone. And so one of the things that I've learned about life experiences and consciousness is we don't all experience life at the same vibration at all times. And there are different things that hold different meanings to different people.
Yeah.
But one of the most important things is that the greatest experiences in the world aren't meant to be had by all people at all stages. So yes, there is a beauty to the fact that it took 30 years to get to a point where you didn't give a shit about spending 40 grand on a hand painting on the side of a car to appreciate its nature. It's also why poor people usually very rarely appreciate art for its intent, and they don't really understand it. They just like pictures and colors and things.
Yeah.
But as they gain experience and understand what art is, it starts to make sense to them. But it's usually not when you're 15, 20, 25. It's usually once you've achieved a certain level that you start to want to experience how other people perceive consciousness and see it. And so you give value to that enough. But someone who's poor, their survivalship hasn't been met, so their internal experience isn't actualized yet. So they can't make sense of external experiences of consciousness from other people. So they don't understand. That's such
it's
a
been
foreign.
beaten out of them by the system.
Well, it's a foreign.
Yeah.
It just doesn't exist.
I have a funny story. I want to be mindful of the time. You got time still?
Yeah, we should be good.
So I have a philosophical question for you, but before I get there, I once had a friend of mine give me a weed candy. I don't do drugs. I don't smoke weed and that stuff. But he gave me a weed candy. I was in Paris with his family, and I unintentionally got super high. Did not know what I was doing. We walk into the Louvre, and I spent probably an hour in front of the Mona. I swear to God, I thought it was 5 minutes. I'm looking at the Mona Lisa, but I'm sitting there, and it's like people going by, and I didn't even recognize it. I look up, it's been an hour. To this day, I vividly remember every single piece of it in the room, and I see it's one of those wild experiences that you cannot pay me enough to take. I mean, the value in that experience. It's weird how it sounds so just strange that a buddy of mine can drug me. I sit in the room, but that experience is priceless. The beauty in the moment, looking back on it, and all the things that came together for that moment is huge. The philosophical question I want to ask you. I met a guy on the East Coast a long time ago. Brilliant guy. He works with Fortune 500 CEOs, but his job is really to kind of gauge personalities that they're going to fit together in the team. He's a different kind of dude. Didn't really spend a lot of time in classical school, but he knows people. He used to always tell me that my biggest flaw was that I expected different people to have the same capacity for work.
Yeah, impossible.
Why do you think that's impossible?
There's so much that goes into that, but I think the evolution of humans, like I say, comes in 3 stages: awareness, self-awareness, consciousness. So different people are at different spectrums of that equation and at different times.
Right.
And so capacity is only expanded based on the spectrum you're at. So like if you're like I'll give you end of second circle on your way to third, and you meet a guy that's the beginning of the first, that's really hungry, like, just I'm going to do it for you, dude, whatever it takes, we'll make it work. Like, I just want a chance. It's not that, like, he's not going to work hard. He just doesn't have the capacity to, like, take in information, dissect it, turn around and use it. And the speed of that transaction from receiving information to acting on it significantly skewed from yours. So there's no way he can achieve or at the same rate, so.
But yet we expect people to.
Well, I don't.
People in society. Well, I shouldn't say we. The society at large expect. And so let's clarify the circle thing from your book, the third circle theory. You have circumstance, right?
So the
society, life,
three circles, which are awareness, your control over basically your environment. Second circle, which is self-awareness, your control over identity, societal identity. Then the second phase being life identity, cosmic identity, I call it. And then the third circle, your control over time, which is consciousness. So that's the evolution of the human. True. Not everyone evolves all the way there, but that's the intended evolution of how the body and the spirit is built together as kind of a coexisting mechanism and what it's intended to be able to accomplish. Now, that you get there or not, totally different things. That's a subjective thing, because I would argue that less than like 1-2% of people, and this isn't a money thing, get to that level of consciousness where they can comprehend time, how it works, and no longer have choices in life, but rather only have intent. Then the majority of human beings are stuck towards they reach the end of the first circle by the end of their life cycle. And really successful people usually reach the middle of the second circle if they're only successful in money. If people question society and want to break free of society, like they want to conquer the matrix and grow past it, and they don't get stuck in the matrix at a high level, then they start transitioning towards the second half of existence, which if you study a lot of what great philosophers like Carl Jung or Nietzsche or people have said in the past, they're like life starts at 40 because the body is supposed to have been set in its societal ways by 40. So like the identity crisis of like your societal identity set, and you're starting to question the existence of life after 40. Like, what is living? What is being a human? The majority of people, though, because society has become so polarizing, get stuck in this idea that they mix this idea that having high success rate in society means that they have their identity to what we talked about earlier, which is hiding behind your business card. I'm an executive. I make $10 million, blah, blah, blah. That's what I am. That's, if I did that, then I would say I'm a banker by societal identity, but my cosmic identity is teaching. So that's why I focus heavily on teaching, and I've been able to kind of combine the two. My cosmic identity being teaching, my societal identity being banking, and I teach a lot of financial concepts. So I've been able to maximize that. That's why I find a lot of success internally, financially, and in every other way, fulfillment and financially in that regard. So when people don't evolve, right, they get kind of stuck there. But then some people start to question life and start to act on that question of curiosity. move towards the end of the second circle, and eventually find themselves faced with this idea of legacy, how that's created, and that they're able to remove their legacy from their personal existence, and therefore from there start to transition towards control of time, because time becomes a limited resource at that point because they understand it. Then they can basically slow it down here and make it function through just incredible intent, incredible experiences, and they basically live the most fulfilled life you can think of.
When you're younger, you don't have a real appreciation for time. You think it's infinite.
Well, because again, it's not that you think it's infinite, it's because you don't have control over your environment.
Mm.
So your environment is attacking you and you're in survival mode to make sense of it. So
Yeah.
you can't worry about things when you're at a stage where like in other words, like you can't have someone worry about the experience they're going to have going to the Louvre, right?
Mhm.
When they're worried about what they're going to eat tomorrow, their kids are going to eat.
Yeah.
So they just don't. It's not even in their spectrum of
To your
like.
point, my mom's never even left the country.
Right. It's not in their spectrum of understanding. So it's just not a connected experience. So like when we say we expect people to have different capacities, I always say meet people where they are and try to improve from their baseline. Don't expect their baseline to be where you are. So that's like a good way to look at leadership and like management of people, regardless that you're building large teams or small teams, is meet people where they are. And if the character is good and the capacity is not, because they're obviously at a lower level, then work off of that. And with the right character, they'll keep working on it, so they'll evolve. But
So, and the irony is, if someone labels you a bad guy because you're so polarizing on social media, bad guys don't say stuff like,
no, but listen, I've never, and I hear Elon said this a lot too, and he's like, I just don't care to be liked. I think it's like a terrible thing when you want to be
I think
liked.
that's the appropriate thing.
Yeah.
You can't, if you care to be liked, you will never win.
I don't give a shit if people like me. At the end of the day, look, like all the dealers hated me when I started teaching watch trading, but thousands of lives have been changed to the point where I see these guys come out of nowhere and they're like, dude, I was broke. Now I got $1 million a year. I got an income. I got a family. I got new kids. Everything's great. That's a success, right? Like I don't care about someone's opinion of me, right? But I've always said this: find one of my students, one anywhere that says they've been scammed by taking my course. They're not there. Now the outside world, oh, this is a scam. This guy's an asshole. Like this is no, like find one guy that like knows me, sat down with me, talked to me, like, and says like, oh, this guy's a fucking dick. Doesn't exist. The guys that say that are the guys that only judge you based on the smallest of context because they're not interested in knowing you. So if that guy has an opinion of me, I just don't care. It's not that like, would I like for that guy to be like, oh my God, you're a nice guy? Well, I wouldn't care. Like it wouldn't change anything. Like if he's like, you're nice or you're like an asshole, my life doesn't change. People are like, you're not likable. Okay.
What does that
like
mean?
what? Like why do I care? Like okay, but like here's the other argument. Someone will say like, oh, I like that guy Stephen Graham on YouTube. We were talking about that. Okay, well, what did he do for you? Nothing. Nothing. Exactly.
Never
like,
does.
You like it because it doesn't challenge you.
Yeah, it makes you feel okay.
Right. And when people, you like people that share a similar view to you because you can get along and have a conversation in agreement. If someone doesn't, usually you're like, that guy's an idiot because he doesn't like this. Or
I'll
doesn't
go
like
a step
that.
further. I'll look at someone like Dave Ramsey. He's not teaching anybody to get out of his ecosystem. He wants to keep you there.
Correct.
The whole point of his ecosystem is to get you so ingratiated into his cult that you never fucking leave.
Yeah.
That's my problem.
Yeah. And a lot of times, obviously, we're on social media platform where people are like, dude, mentor me. And my first answer is, did you take my books? Did you take my courses? No. I'll pay you 30 grand. Mentor me. And I tell you what, when you finish all my books and courses, then call me. And they're like, oh, but that's 30 grand. I'm like, no, it's way less. Like some courses are $500, some books are like $10. By the time you're done, if you don't have the answers you seek, there's two things that are going to have happen. First, you would have helped yourself, right? So enough for me to know that you're genuinely interested
and committed
in learning, right? Yeah. Like you're taking the steps. Secondly, it's a lot cheaper to read a book than to have me ear fuck you from A to Z on this concept, like at 30 grand, like a month.
Sounds sexy.
Right?
Yeah.
And then 3, I was like, there's something else here too. It's going to help me become a better teacher if you tell me you've gone through all my courses and all my books and you're still stuck.
Yeah.
And so if the value of our conversation is not reciprocated, I don't give a shit about your 30 grand. So if you pay me 30 grand, I'm past the stage where the money value exceeds the real value of evolution. So I don't need the 30 grand. What I need is for that conversation between us to be meaningful. And if you've done, like, I'll do coaching for free for students that have taken all my courses. You know, they're like, come like, I'm confused about this, or someone asked me a question about my book. I'll take like 10 minutes to answer, you know, like completely free.
Wow.
And they're like, oh, like, why'd you do that? I'm like, because you made an effort to want to learn why this worldview is potentially an opportunity for you. It is my duty as a cosmic acceptance of my purpose of teaching to ensure that you're understanding what I'm putting down in the correct manner, that I like it or not, because that is my chosen purpose, is to teach. And so I cannot let you get away with misunderstanding my intent when you've made an effort to learn. So like, that's what a good teacher would do.
Yeah.
That's the key. And if I've committed to teaching, then I have to accept that. Like, I can't just say, well, as long as there's money associated with it, like, pay me, right? But when someone doesn't take the courses and is like, you know, I want you to coach me, they're basically saying, convince me they can teach me something. And I'm like, I'm not in that business, nor do I have time, nor do I give a shit to take your money for that, nor do I need your money. So, because people think once they pay for a service or something,
that you work for them.
right, that they basically, like, they're owed something. So sometimes people will buy my, like, a service in one of our coaching things, like in one of our courses or something. They'll be like, help me to get a car or whatever. And I'm like, this is what a hack is. This is what your car is. And they'll be like, oh, but what I want is this. And I'm like, I can't help you buy that. And they go, but I paid you. I'm like, I will refund you. It's fine. But I can't help you buy that. And they go, why not? That's what I want. I go, because if you buy that, you're going to lose 40 grand. Then you're going to blame me for losing 40 grand because I didn't stop you. I was like, my job isn't to stop you. My job is to teach you. You paid me for a service to do something that I do in this service. You're asking me to change what I do in the service and do something else. The outcome of that is going to be a negative experience for you, and it's going to be a negative review for me. And then it's going to go you telling your friends that you did that. You bought this. I helped you. You lost 40 grand. Wow. Like, this guy was bullshit. I don't want that. There's no money you can pay me that's going to take away my integrity or change my mind to make you happy. So I'd rather just repay you. They're like, oh, you've already taken 2 hours to talk to me. I'm like, I don't care. Like, the only reason we even have these programs to help people find cars is to prove this works when they don't know what they're doing. It's not to take them away into something else, like entirely like, oh, this is your imagination. You wanted a blue Porsche and you wanted a 2025 and this is what you bought and the guy told you this was a good deal and you're making me compete or I was like, I don't care. So the intent is to teach. So the life around that has to be authentic to that more than anything else. Like, I can't forfeit my integrity as a teacher, no matter how much money comes, because then I'm forfeiting my cosmic identity for my societal one. And remember, my cosmic identity comes after my societal one, not before. So that's why I always tell people, making a ton of money is not always directly related to what you want the world to know you for. But it can be something you do so you don't have to put up or have other people corrupt what you're here to do. So that's why it's so important. And that's why when I wrote my books, they were different and separate from all these courses and all these other things I do. Like, I've made a fortune and continue to make a lot of money in the car space, watch space, around these industries. Like, everything from a bank that funds, you know, dealers and jewelers to a huge tech company that does a ton of money around technology as it pertains to watches. So there is so many things that I make money with that are in that industry. And yet my true passion and love is consciousness and helping humans become better, which I've done for a decade, even though it hasn't been my main core reasoning for my income. But some of the things that are important, the reason I've been able to do so well at it is because I haven't had to rely on selling an extra book or selling an extra course or selling mentorship in that as a result of surviving and thriving, right? Like, I'm like, hey, these businesses, I'm making millions of dollars. I'm fine. Like, I'm okay. Now here's this other thing I really want to do. I can share that and do it for like 10 hours and I don't care if I get paid or not. And so if I can do it later and suddenly it pays billions of dollars, great. Like, that's fine. I'm not saying, oh, I'm going to turn down the money. But what I'm saying is I'm not going to corrupt how I do it because the money is how people perceive me to want to do it. I teach completely separate from anything else, which is I made my money. I love teaching. I do it. If I love doing something and I'm really fucking good at it, of course I should get paid for it because that's how people exchange value. for what they can't give you. Or I'm not a monk, so if they want to learn to drive a Ferrari, they can pay me.
You may be a terrible monk.
Right, but they can pay me. But what happens is I don't have to teach something different because that's what the market wants to know. When marketers come in, they're like, this is my societal identity. I'm a marketer. So I will market the next great thing that makes me money. I've been teaching the same shit for the last like 15 plus years. So it's almost 2 decades now that I'm teaching literally alternative assets. I was teaching alternative assets when people thought it was bullshit and nobody should buy a car. They thought it was bullshit, nobody should buy a watch. They thought it was bullshit because art was depreciating. Doesn't matter. I've been teaching the same thing. I've been teaching in the highs, in the lows, in the best of times, in the worst financial collapse, in the best times where, the best economic times where people were printing money like didn't exist. I'll still be teaching it in 10 years because not only it's what I believe, but it's what I do. So I only teach from experience, and that's what I teach. Some people like it, some people not. The people that do, like in terms of curiosity and engage with it, typically have a lot of success like your buddy, and it triggers something in them to keep going. Now, if that's the only trigger, and that's it, and that's our interaction, you just interacted with me and you believe you can, and you went in on your own, had curiosity and said, hey, I don't care about your courses, I'm going to do this on my own. Okay, then great. I've inspired you to go do that. Fantastic. I don't need to get paid for that. Hey, I don't know how to do this. Well, listen, I've put this all down for you. So you have a step-by-step guideline to get started, get on your way and execute effectively. Does that mean I'm the most knowledgeable guy in the world on cars? No. Am I the best banker in the world? No. But I'm a really good fucking teacher. And I know exactly how to teach people because I know what blocks them from being successful at doing something. That they want to face that or not might take 5 years in between the time they interact and the time they act. But if I've helped by having great community, great other people that I've taught that come back and help others, as time goes, instead of a kid taking 3 years to finally commit, it'll take him 3 weeks. You know, it used to take me probably 4 to 8 months to convince someone that once they took my first course, you need to go in and like buy your first watch, buy your first car. Now it takes me 15 days. But that's because of the track record. It's not because I'm doing something different. My training's improved every year. I improve my classes every year, every course, completely free. I never charge anything. So we do a course since 2007. Every year there's a new course. The same guy that paid $97 back then or $500 today gets the same exact course updated over and over and over. And it's free. Like I don't go like, oh, dude, I did 2.01 version. Buy that. That's like 10 grand. You know, like now that's like so much better because the person I am today knows so much more than the person back then.
Yeah.
Teaching you so much more now. So more knowledge. Oh, the course is like 3 hours longer. So you should pay for that. Nope. Same cost. And people are like, how come your courses don't go up like astronomical value? Because he would get less people to try them.
Yeah.
So I want them to try them. I want them to go in and I want them to attempt to keep an open mind that if you knew what the fuck you were doing, you wouldn't be enticed by my ad to come click it and wonder. Because you already knew what the fuck you were doing. You already have 5 Ferraris. You already have your life together. You're like, great. I don't give a shit. But you're not. That's why you see my ad and you go, wow, like I want a car. Then you go, I don't like that guy. I won't learn from him. Well, you didn't like most of your teachers in school either.
There's a lot of them I didn't like.
I know, exactly. But the ones that made the biggest impacts weren't the ones you loved the most. They're often the ones that taught you something that you didn't expect to learn, and they pulled it out of you in a different way. And you were like, wow, that guy took effort. And, you know, like,
That's probably true. Yeah.
In topics that you maybe had no interest. You know, they got you interested in chemistry when you didn't. And that's the key.
Still
you
don't
know?
like chemistry. Yeah.
I don't like chemistry either. But if you can get someone curious enough, instead of being envious, to get them curious enough to try something, that I think is an effective marketing tactic, right? To get them in the door.
Yeah.
But if the quality of the teaching can be there so that they learn something once they're hooked in the door, then that's the impression I want to leave on people.
That backs it up.
Yeah.
I think that's what we should call it a wrap. Let's get you to dinner.
You got it, brother.
I appreciate you so much for coming on.
My pleasure. Hopefully there was enough value here for people.
Oh, there's going to be some value there. And you know what? We're going to have the links in the show notes. There'll be everything there you need to see more. You'll have all the access to all that material and more. Thank you for tuning in, everybody. We'll see you next time. And as Saied would say, good night, everybody.
Bye.
Yeah, that's not good. We'll work on the site. Yeah.